It is time now for Money Power Politics. And today is day 8 of the government shutdown, with both sides digging in with zero end in sight. But that doesn't mean the Trump administration has stopped making deals. And a recent one caught our eye. Listen to this one. On Monday, the White House said it is taking a 10% stake in Trilogy Metals. Yep, I get it. You've never heard of it. It is a small Canadian mining company after investing nearly $36 million into it. The company has mining rights in a remote region of Alaska. And reportedly, it employs just 5 people. But what it also has is a big Wall Street investor, John Paulson. You might know his name because he made billions betting against subprime mortgages back in 2007, and he's a big supporter of Donald John Trump. If you remember, in the second inauguration, he was standing right up there next to all the tech leaders. In the last election, he hosted a fundraiser that brought in over $50 million, according to the campaign. That's a lot of money. Well, after the Trump administration announced this investment in Trilogy, the stock soared almost 300%. And Paulson's investment, at least on paper, went from $30 million to $100 million. That's even more than 50. Joining us now, Steve Liesman, CNBC senior economics reporter. Our nightcap is still here. Steve, investors right now are trying to figure out what could be the next White House pick. It's like the administration has become a stock picker. But obviously, when it chooses a company, no surprise, the stock soars. This is not how capitalism works. Like, on what planet is the SEC right now? This seems like this violates every possible framework, rule they have in place.
You know, Stephanie, I'm sort of surprised. I'm waiting for my good Republican friends who are free market champions to step up and say something about this. But what's interesting is everybody's complaining about Mamdani, who wants to open up a food store. But I hate to say it, but a government-run food store. But it's the Trump administration that's owning the means of production, which you know where that line comes from. So it's very strange to me, and I'm trying to understand the rationale behind this. I'm down here in Washington, hopefully going to talk to some people that will explain it to me. But it certainly is at odds with my long-run understanding of Republican economics, which was basically hands off by the government. This is hands in and hands in a whole bunch of different pockets, as you just explained.
But what could this do to markets and the economy? Because it's not just the companies that we're, quote unquote, investing in. It's all the other ones in those industries that they're not. Or it's the industries that they're leaving in the dust, or the ones impacted by tariffs. Like, this is warping free markets.
So this is exactly why the Republicans argue that government should not get involved, because government, they believe, doesn't do anything well. But certainly one of the things it doesn't do well is pick the right winners of the future. And so by doing so, it does exactly what you said. It warps what we would call more clinically is the allocation of capital, where the money goes and why the money goes there. The government may have this right. It may have some interest in this, but what's unclear to me is what is the purpose of the ownership? What is the government? I guess they'll maybe make some money back on this, but certainly your first critique is really the key one. It warps the allocation of capital, and it creates winners and losers by the government. Everybody was all upset when the Fed was out there buying things during the pandemic, saying they were doing that. They were warping the allocation of capital. So it doesn't make very much sense. It's not congruent with actually decades of Republican views about the economy and how economic policy should work.
Well, let me ask you about what Morgan Stanley calls a tax on capital, and that's the tariffs. Because this morning, the president's longtime trade advisor, Peter Navarro, had this to say about where we stand with our trading partners around the world. Watch.
We are just broadly in the most beautiful place for the American people we've been, I think, ever with respect to trade. We're engaged. President Trump is engineering a fundamental restructuring of the international trade environment so that we are no longer penalized by the rules of the World Trade Organization, which fundamentally skew against us.
Okay, so I'm guessing if I asked John Deere, Walmart, Nike, or any soybean farmer in this whole entire country, none of them would say that we are in the most beautiful place for the American people. What do you think?
I don't think we're in the most beautiful place when it comes to the tariffs. Yes, they have brought in revenue. They might have some modest impact in terms of supporting or otherwise motivating some domestic production. But really what's happened is a whole lot of business plans across the economy have really been thrown into doubt, and some of them made unprofitable by these tariffs. I think businesses are getting by slowly, but over time there'll be an erosion here that will really, actually we're already paying for it when you look at manufacturing jobs, what's happened, the general softness in the economy. This is not a beautiful thing. This is a tax. And it's a tax that especially hits poor people because it's a regressive tax, because they spend more of their income on consumable and on spending and non-discretionary items especially. So that's an issue, Stephanie, and it's a big one. There are a lot of companies out there. They get in line for tariff exemption, so it's a little hard to figure it all out. But the problem here is that it kind of gets back to the first thing. It is chaotic, and it's unclear who gets it and why, and it's the government's hand in all of this. It's looking a little bit more like Russia, where I spent 6 years, than it is the old United States.
And quickly, just one more. The president and the administration talk all the time about all these factories that are going to be built and these companies that are, have decided to innovate here. Can you name for me any companies that have any big, brand new manufacturing plans that were not already on paper or in the works before the president put the tariffs in place?
Stephanie, I'm going to decline to answer that because I don't know. It's something that's on my list to check out a little bit more. I do know a bunch of these plans were out there already, and I don't know how many of the plans that have been announced by the president have been executed, but it is something I need to report, and I don't know the facts on that.
Me too, and I think that's what's so puzzling, because one would think this is the thing the president would be out front with and open, because it would be a huge positive impact from the tariffs.
Well,
all right, Dave. Yes, Steve?
What's interesting here, among other things, is the AI boom. This was well in place before the president took office. It is certainly accelerated. Whether he deserves any credit for that is unclear to me, but it is the biggest part of investment going on in this economy. And I would say that a lot of that is divorced from the president's policies when it comes to AI and the AI boom, which is really leading both the stock market and capital investment in this country.
Yeah, and listen, the president has made it clear there is going to be, I don't want to say no regulation, but little regulation in the AI space. So if you are any of those companies, this is the moment to invest big. Dave, while all of this is going on, of course, we're in week 2 of the shutdown. 250,000 federal workers did not get paychecks this week. Another 2 million won't if this goes into next week. Like, for real, how long can this play out? Because I don't want to go so far as to say the president seems to really like this, but I don't get the sense at all that, like, smoke is coming out of anybody's ears. There's pizzas getting delivered to the Hill, and they're working through the night and getting stuff done.
No, they're really not. And it ties into the discussion we were just having, because what is new since the last CR vote, when there wasn't a shutdown, is the rescissions victory, is the administration convincing Republicans that if they don't like spending, don't worry about it. He's going to be able to withhold it, and if necessary, send the spending he's withholding to be approved and taken back by Congress. That changed everything. So what Democrats have said is, as long as that's on the table, we can't agree to any deal because you guys are going to take it back. You could say you're hiring back federal workers, and you won't. And that's the part they're negotiating for. When you ask how long this could go, that is it a downside? Does the administration care that much? I'm not sure. But that is a new factor. His use of power is ironically making it harder for any member of Congress to say, well, here's a deal on paper that he would stick to that ends the whole thing.
Well, the IRS said it is going to furlough about half of its workers. And they already, I think the IRS has the same amount of employees they had 10 years ago. Now, people who got extensions on their taxes for this year, next week is their deadline. If you're seeing half the IRS workers furloughed, how's that even going to work? I'm not sure, but I actually think Scott Bessent might even be like the interim overseer of the IRS right now.
Yeah, you're not just that, but I mean, we obviously know we're near a tipping point with the FAA, with air traffic controllers. I actually think the real incentive and the pressure on both sides, but more on Republicans, I think is going to start to happen when some of those folks start to miss checks, threaten to not come back to work, start to impact infrastructure around the country. But here's the big scoop to me. I think Republicans are losing on this shutdown. And I think they've been losing the whole time. I actually think it's interesting. Democrats were thought to have a bad hand, which maybe you could say that they did, but they played it about as well as you can. Like if it was a bad hand in poker, they played that bad hand about as well as you can play it. Because right now you've got Donald Trump defending, not doing anything about this healthcare premium spike. You've got Mike Johnson confronting Gallego and Kelly in the House office building right outside of the speaker's lobby, talking about not seating Adelita Grajova because obviously he doesn't want to do that because that would trigger some findings on the Epstein files. But they're on a defense, and they know that this is an issue that they're upside down on with the public.
You disagree?
I disagree 100%. I think they've played into Donald Trump's hands. Going back to the earlier conversation, it's all about power, right? He doesn't actually want free markets. He wants to control the markets. Just like he said this week when he talked to TikTok users and he said, hey, young people, you owe me. I did you a favor. I saved TikTok. Now it's going to happen. He's going to do the same thing with the shutdown. Donald Trump wants a shutdown. He just gave them the Democrats just gave him a giant gift. This is Doge on steroids. You want to give Trump a chance to get rid of thousands of federal workers? He's going to take that. And what he's going to do now is say, hey, military, the Democrats are trying to deny you your check. I'm going to make a concession. I'm going to get you your checks back. And he is happy to keep the government shut down. And he's happy to blame it on the Democrats because he controls the narrative.